Good morning all, and welcome to the SABS webinar on the Occupational Health and Safety Management System. My name is Sadhvir Basoon. I'm the executive for the Standards Division at the SABS, and this morning we have a group and a panel of experts in the various fields of occupational health and safety management, both from the private sector and the public sector, and I trust we'll be having some engaging information sharing opportunities from our panel of speakers this morning. I would like to firstly have a round of introductions of the panel, and we'll go in sequence of the presentations. So it will be Mr. Jerry Ramdani, followed by Mr. J. Naid Ganson. We are waiting on another panel member to come through, Mr. Jacob Malatse, but as he comes through, we'll have a round of introduction just prior to his presentation. So Jerry, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Basoon. Thanks as well for the opportunity, I think, to share this important standard with the country himself. Just to the, I think the panelists and also to the invitees. My name is Jay Ramdani. I was actually the South African representative on the ISO committee that actually drafted and then obviously was in, part of the committee that developed the standard itself. So it took over about 5 years or so. So yeah, it's a privilege and honor for me to share information and just bring up the panelists and also the invitees to speak about the new standard.
Thank you, Jerry. I'd like to move on to Mr. Jay Ganson.
Jay, you muted.
Good morning to the viewers. Good morning to the attendees. Dr. Bishun and the rest of the panel. It's once again a pleasure to be part of such a prestigious event that is being hosted as an initiative of SABS. My name is Jay Ganson, been with the Bureau for the past 12 years in the EMS OHS energy management field. And once again, let's hope that today's deliberation be fruitful to the bigger audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. So if the panel of experts, if you could kindly close off the cameras. I am wary of the connectivity as well. So this will allow for a seamless presentation to go forward. So just in the program, I'd just like to highlight the program. So I'll be providing you with a brief introduction of the SABS as a national standards body. Subsequent to that, we'll have a presentation by Mr. Ramdani on the benefits of SANS 45001 in occupational health and safety, and including the revised requirements in OHS 18000. As you're probably aware, there's a transition between the OHS 18000 from the 18000 documents to ISO 45001. Mr. Jacob Malatse, he's from the Department of Labour, and he'll be providing a presentation on South Africa's legal requirements on occupational health and safety. And subsequent to that, we have a presentation by Mr. Jay Ganson on the road to certification. We'll have an opportunity for a panel discussion, so please keep your comments, and you will see in your panel a question and answer icon. Please, you're more than welcome to comment and pose questions. At the final session of the panel discussion, we will try and address the comments and question and answers as well during the session. And lastly, we'll have a closure to the program. This session should take place within the time period of an hour and a half, plus minus a couple of minutes, and we trust we'll have a successful event. So colleagues, I'm just going to give you an introduction to the South African Bureau of Standards. Many of you might appreciate that the SABS is an organization that has been established some 75 years ago. So this year, we basically celebrate our 75th anniversary. We're mandated by the Department of Trade and Industry, so we are responsible to report on our mandate and objectives to the Department of Trade and Industry. And we fall under the SQUAM infrastructure, which is the technical infrastructure, and it comprises of 4 institutions: the SABS, the NRCS, SANAS, and NAMISA. SABS is the key focus of the organization is to develop, promote, and maintain South African national standards. We also are accountable to promote quality with respect to commodities, products, and services for domestic and export markets, and also provide a series of conformity assessment services, which includes, amongst others, certification, testing services, local content verification. The NRCS is the regulator. It is very important to understand that the SABS has no regulatory authority. All the services, including the national standards that we develop, are for voluntary application. The NRCS is the regulator. It's one of many regulators in the country, and they are responsible for administration of compulsory specifications. SANAS is our accreditation body, and they are responsible for the formal recognition of institutes that provide conformity assessments. And lastly, NAMISA is the metrology institution, and they are responsible for calibration through a wide variety of activities, including measurement, accuracy of measurement, and traceability. So you all might understand the importance of standards, national standards and international standards, and how it has a significant impact on the socioeconomic systems. And I trust that without standards, we would not be able to have a functioning economy and a fully functional society, including the increase in the quality of standards, products, services in the marketplace. So standards serve a number of needs, from a public sector services to private sector services to supporting the consumer. It provides technical information where the policymaker has the ability to use this information and these standards to implement and support the implementation of policy. It certainly reflects the state of the art, and it's a vehicle to dissemination of new technologies, innovative practices, and it certainly supports industrialization objectives. Regulators are very important to implementing standards because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we want to make sure that regulators use standards as a basis for achieving their regulatory objectives. And also standards provide a tool for a wide variety of conformity assessment services to provide for confidence in products, systems, processes, and personnel in the marketplace. So at a global level, South Africa is a signatory to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 goals. If you translate that into the National Development Plan, every single goal, all 17 of them, easily fit into the National Development Plan. This means that each government department has an objective and a policy directive that will be aligned to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but more importantly, ensuring that you have a national perspective in terms of the implementation of a national development plan. Key to this is as well, from a Department of Trade and Industry and Competition perspective, is the national industrial priority sectors. So the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition have been hard at work in terms of establishing industry master plans, a number of wide variety of sectors. This includes agro processing, a substantial amount of industrial sectors, the tourism sector, high-tech sectors, economy, oceans economy, and the creative sector. These master plans will play a very important role where SABS will have to align and develop national standards and aligned conformity assessment services to provide support to local industrialization. So a national standard is basically knowledge and represents the agreed way of addressing a current or potential issue. It is underpinned by a diverse range of documents, include specifications, guidelines, management systems, and today we are going to be talking about management systems, specifically the Occupational Health and Safety Management Services systems. They are very essential for industrialization, as I alluded to in the previous slide, and it's very important to understand that they are for voluntary application. They developed according to international best practice principles, and we are a very close association with as membership to ISO and IEC. Our standards are developed according to the best practice WTO TBT Annex, which is the code of good practice for preparation and application of standards. And once again, standards are not regulations. Regulatory authorities should, whenever possible, use our national standards to conduct their regulatory work. Regulatory authorities should endeavour to apply and reference South African national standards and methods that will respect the voluntary nature of South African national standards. So the development of national standards, as pointed out, is underpinned by a number of principles, international best practice principles. The first is levelling the playing field, and this is ensuring that the principles, as appears on the screen, transparency, openness, market relevance, due process, consensus, coherence, and stakeholder engagement. These are the fundamental principles that we seek to achieve in the development of national standards. Secondly, we've got to make sure that we have a national stakeholder balance. Industry plays a very important role in the development of national standards. We also have representatives from government, labour, academia, NGOs, consumer, and to an extent SMMEs. As much as we would like a significant portion of SMMEs participating, I think there's significant challenges in SMMEs participating as individual organisations in our technical committees. But we certainly strive to ensure that we have a stakeholder balance in our various technical committees. We basically have a program of work on an annual basis of more than 800 projects, meaning 800 standards that we are working on at any given time. We have a collection of national standards of more than 7,400, and we have in excess of 300 technical committees and subcommittees that comprise of experts that participate in our technical committees. So the engine of the standards development are the experts participating in our technical committees, either on a national basis or an international basis. And we strive to ensure that we provide the necessary tools. This includes online collaboration tools and ICT tools as well for them to effectively participate and deliver on national publications. Just to provide an insight in terms of the various levels of engagement of standardization, as pointed out, we are members of ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, as well as the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC. And we are, as members, we participate quite rigorously in a number of these technical committees where relevant to provide South Africa's input towards the development of international standards. At the regional level, and this is at the African continental level, South Africa SABS is a member of ARSO, which is the African Organization for Standardization. The equivalent of IEC in the African continent is AFSEC, which is the African Electrotechnical Commission. And lastly, the sub-regional body, which is SADC-STAN. The fundamental objective of these regional bodies is to ensure that there is good and efficient harmonization of African regional standards. And this allows for, as you quite aware, the African Continental Free Trade Area is currently in progress under implementation, and this will facilitate the harmonization of these regional standards, will facilitate the movement of goods and services more efficiently within the African continent. And lastly, on a national basis, I pointed out the statistics on the number of standards, including the projects and the extensive amount of technical expertise that participate in our technical committees. The SABS, the Standards Division as a national standards body, is responsible for the governance of all these technical committees and the work within these technical committees. Just to highlight, we're also members of other multilateral bodies, which is the BRICS member bodies, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Just recently, as of yesterday, we had our BRICS National Standards Body Convention with the countries, which is a very successful virtual meeting hosted by the Russian Standards Body. We're also members of the Pacific Area Standards Congress, as well as the Commonwealth Standards Network. As a summary in terms of the development process, I think it's important just to provide you with a summary of the various stages. In essence, there's 6 stages to develop a national standard. The first being where there is a request for a standard, referred to as a preliminary work item, where there is an element of investigation to determine whether that standard is relevant and how it could be address a particular problem in the marketplace. Subsequent to that, it goes to the technical committee, the relevant technical committee, and is for an endorsement and a process of approval by the approvals committee. Once this project is approved, which is now going to the preparatory stage, which is the working document, technical experts are put into a grouping to define the technical requirements for that standard. And this process might take a few months to sometimes literally a year and a half, depending on the complexity of the standard, whether it's a homegrown standard or an adoption of an international standard with modifications. It thereafter goes into a committee stage, whereby the committee members, either a TC or a subcommittee, engages with the document, and it's a process of consensus development. At this stage, it further can be projected in the sense of having 2 or 3 committee stages, where the documents need to have a consensus approval by the committees. The penultimate stage in the publication goes out to public inquiry. So every citizen has the opportunity to comment on the standard. These comments will be taken into consideration by the committee. And finally, the last stage will be the publication of the standard. Colleagues, post the summary of the publication, I think we all have experienced a very difficult challenge in COVID-19. It certainly has taken us out of our comfort zone. It certainly has projected a new way of thinking, a new normal, as they say it. And we certainly need to gather momentum in terms of agility and allowing this positive disruption and giving us the opportunities to start rethinking the ways that we've been doing things and not doing business as usual as we have been doing and expecting the same results. There's a significant amount of change that organizations are embarking on, both in the public and private sector, but I must emphasize that having a uniform, consistent approach towards addressing significant changes in the environment, in the ecosystem that we work in, an example is COVID-19 pandemic, allows for good solutions at a national level and international level for a consistent approach. And this is why international standards and being members of ISO are so important. We take the best information, the best solutions, international solutions, and we nationalize them. So there's a number of management system standards that we have adopted. This is just a handful of the various management system standards that we've adopted. Our first webinar SABS hosted was on security resilience, business continuity management systems on SANS ISO 22301. We will be looking into the future to host a number of these webinars, and this is in response to COVID-19 or any other issue around bringing about solutions to counteract disruption. And I take it as positive disruption, where it will certainly enable organizations to rethink and refocus. Today's discussion is going to be on occupational health and safety management system. I think, and we'll provide our speakers, expert speakers will provide a wealth of information on the implementation of the standard certification processes and especially the legal aspects of the standard as well. In these times, there's been a significant impetus towards transition and digital transformation into ICT tools, and cybersecurity becomes a critical issue of concern with a number of organizations. So ISO 27001 Information Security Management System is a series of documents that organizations, both in the public and private sector, can also include as part of their tools to counteract cybersecurity. We also have management system standards in risk management, and one very important standard which has been recently launched or published by the South African Bureau of Standards is anti-bribery management system. So we are looking forward to convening another webinar as a series of webinars, and with particular focus on ISO 37001, considering the serious challenges that both the public and private sector is experiencing around corruption in the country as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's an introduction to the SABS. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would like to move ahead with our next presenter. I'll introduce him to you in a second. Our next presenter is Mr. Jerry Ramdani. He has over 20 years experience in working with ISO standards and conformity assessments through all phases of implementation, auditing, certification, and accreditation. Jerry has been actively involved with the South African Bureau of Standards as on the National Standards Body Mirror Committees, technical committees, and these include a number of TCs, TC3, 176, TC241, TC283, and 293 since 2011. So he has an extensive experience of 9 years with the South African Bureau of Standards, including participation at the ISO Project Committee 283, which is responsible for the development of ISO 45001. He also has been recently appointed as the working group convener for the drafting of an implementation handbook on ISO 45001. He's currently a director at the Industry Compliance and Certification Authority of South Africa. And I would like to now hand over to Jerry. Jerry, welcome, and I'll hand over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Busun, and good morning again to the panelists and also to the invitees. Yes, quickly, I'm actually going to go through you for like 20 minutes or so I'm trying to compress this presentation, but just to give a high-level overview of ISO 45001 OSH management system, including obviously the differences or the migration from OSH 18001 and the benefits that actually will be derived from the standard itself. Just from the high level or the international concerns before the standard was actually developed and published, was there was about 2.78 million deaths occurring annually with regards to occupational health and safety related fatalities. Just to look at the stats itself, obviously this is from the ILO. The ILO just coincidentally was the premier body that looked at occupational health and safety, and I'll discuss very lightly with them in terms of they also had an international standard that addressed health and safety itself. But from the alarming stats, for example, you know, the cost of occupational health and safety related illnesses and deaths were almost $3 trillion that this amounted to. So the cost and the deaths and also the interruption of life of workers and their families was astounding. And to address this global, obviously, pandemic, I can say, but look at the deaths compared to COVID-19, it is actually quite a lot. The international community got together and decided to actually put on a standard. The need obviously was quite onerous because ISO never published an occupational health and safety management system in the past. So this was new ground and new territory for them. And the need came obviously on the backbone of saving lives, preventing OSH incidents, and also improving employee well-being, not only for the employee themselves, but obviously for their families at home. The need to harmonize the systems as well was one of the key points for ISO in discussing a way forward to develop the standard and get it published, because the standard had to look at all levels of implementation. If we look at the OSHA 18001, was primarily very rigid and focused a lot on companies of a larger scale. So in the development of ISO 45001, it had to be effective at local, national, regional, and international level. So standard himself, like the other ISO systems 9001 and 14, had to actually encapsulate implementation at all these levels of work, be it a person that's a self-employed organization to even a 10,000 man organization. The standard had to fit and address all risks within the organization itself. Looking at the harmonization of standards itself, as I said, ISO never developed the OSH standard. When I get around, a lot of people speak about, as OSHAS 18,000, the ISO standard, and I always like to say that OSHAS 18,001, although was a SANS adopted standard, was actually a British standard, which obviously we had to adopt since there was no ISO standard himself. Looking at the work that ISO does, there's over 21,500 standards that's developed. On the screen itself is just some of the other standards developed by ISO with regard to occupational health and safety. In developing ISO 45001, we had to actually look at how does the 45001 harmonize with other standards itself. So with 45,000, it integrates and harmonizes quite nicely with other standards and other management systems that ISO has developed. Just quickly, the major differences between 18,000 and 45. Unlike the transition from 9001 to the ISO 9000 2015, where it was a transition, when it comes to OSHAS and the ISO 45000, there are major differences, and hence we actually call it the migration. If you do have an OSHAS 18001 system and you want to move over to 45, you got to be aware of the major differences in the standards itself. ISO 45000, as I said, is a ISO management system, and again, it concentrates on all the interactions between your organizational processes, not only the occupational health and safety component, but looking at also your business environment. And OSHAS 18000 was focused largely on hazards, on the management of the workplace and hazards and internal issues. The 45001 is a premier ISO standard in terms of management systems. It is at the core a process-based management system standard, whereas OSHAS 18001 was largely procedure-based, especially when it comes to auditing. The guys will say, give me your 8 mandatory procedures, whereas ISO 45000 is dynamic. It is not process-based, but again, process-based and not procedure-based. ISO 45000 as well, I'll speak a bit later, is actually based on the eye-level structure and is dynamic in all its clauses, where 18,000 was very procedure-based in terms of looking at just a very specific indicators, whereas 45000 takes the holistic approach, addressing all business-related risks, not only the OSH risks, as was the case of 18,001. 45001 looks at risks and opportunities. This is a new concept that was introduced by ISO in 2015 at the start of ISO 9001, and as it progressed to the 14,001, and we actually adopted the same approach when it came to 45,000. We looked at the risks of the management system, focusing not only on the OSH side, but also looking at the business environment, internal and external. And whereas OSHAS 18001 was exclusively with OSH-related risk. Hence, we had hazard identification, and ISO 45000 looks at also the business risks and risks from obviously external parties that they bring on your site or impact on your activities as well. 45001 looked at the views and also the risks of your interested parties, and OSHAS 18001 did not look at that. In the past, obviously, we had a safety manager that took care of OSHAS 18001. The system was obviously not integrated into business processes and business operations, and it was largely a standalone system. 45001 is a totally integratable system. I'll speak about it in the next few slides. And again, it is totally different to OSHAS 18001, a huge difference when it comes to these two standards. Also, another thing to point out that in the development phase of ISO 45001, OSHAS 18001 group was there. They were totally involved from the beginning to end of the development of ISO 45001. On 2018, the group closed down and the standard was withdrawn from obviously the international arena and also from BSI itself. So the OSHAS 18001 no longer exists. And we as well, I would say we, the SABS, actually adopted ISO 45001. There was a ballot, and again, the ballot came back positive, where OHS 18,000 was removed from obviously our gazetted standards, and ISO 45,001 replaced 18,000. So at the moment, 18,000 actually is not supported, and again, not part of our technical infrastructure when it comes to management standard systems itself. Just looking at the new ISO 45,001, it was, as I said earlier, it looking at companies that are small and companies that are large. It looked at obviously as well, including organizations like public entities, government bodies, trade unions. So it took the views of all these stakeholders and interested parties. And also what I like about the 45,001, there's a large emphasis on legal compliance. And again, it moved from just a procedural-based conformity assessment now to a performance-based standard, which is a great value for regulators, which had a lot of problems with OHS 18,001, where it was not very focused on legal compliance, and again, performance of actually how does the management system not only complies, but give value to its employees itself. The 45,001 is using a structure that we call the high-level structure, or the HRS, which actually integrates other management systems like ISO 9001, 14, and 39,001, which are your premier management system standards. In saying that, what do it mean? It means that the core text of all the 9,000, 14, and 45 are exactly the same. The structure, the terminology, the look and feel of it is totally, as I said, it is core in all three management system standards. What does this do? It allows you, if you have ISO 9000 and a 14,000 management system, to actually totally integrate the management system. It actually reduces a lot of constraints on the organization when it comes to documentation or information, when it comes to obviously having a single resource or even a reduced resource, to having integrated management meetings, to having integrated audits, to having integrated training. So not only your cost comes down, but again, the way of doing business, it is totally revamped. Again, a lot of clients are getting maximum benefits from this integrated approach as well. It also obviously looks at your complex environments. You know, Dr. Bisoon spoke about COVID-19 and climate change and the economy. ISO 45,000 obviously is at the forefront of this. Also, it looks at all complex environments, not only on, for example, the whole hazard-related systems, and in keeping with obviously 9001, which moved from products to services. Again, ISO 45,000 captures these complex environments as well. Obviously the fourth bullet point on enhancing the organization's ability to address health and safety risks. I think I was quite happy, you know, not obviously with what happened from the pandemic of COVID-19, but looking at the terminology of PPE, whereas in the past a lot of people didn't understand what's PPE, what's the purpose of risk assessment, putting mitigation in place. So obviously when COVID-19 came, companies that had ISO 45,000 or 18,000 actually were at the forefront because they understood the terminology. So again, with 45,000, it's actually looking at, it's a preventative tool. And again, it actually is looking forward. I'll touch a bit later on one of the obviously differences between 45 and 18 when it comes to preventative and corrective action itself. Looking obviously at the benefits, obviously for organizations, I think that's what is the key focus of this management system standard. As I said earlier, this is the first ISO management system or international standard for health and safety. And again, it's intended to help thousands, if not millions, of organizations address their OSH risks, and again, to eliminate any hazards, prevent deaths, and obviously look at having a total workplace well-being in terms of improving OSH performance. And when we talk about OSH performance, we're talking obviously about the prevention of deaths, the elimination of hazards, and again, having a workforce that is adapting and resilient in terms of anticipating what's going to happen, preparing their workplaces, preparing their employees, and preparing the management system, obviously, to actually speak and look for new risks, and again, put mitigation and prosper in these times that we are in. Just looking at a few things that the standard does. First and foremost, it is intended to ensure that your health and safety management system is aligned with your strategic direction of your organization. From the changes that ISO made with 9,000 and 14,000, including 45,000, is that these management systems, as I said earlier, are premier in terms of looking at the strategic direction of an organization. Not only looking at with 18,000, what are the OSH risks and hazards, but now we see that the elevation of the standard and also elevation of the OSH professional when it comes to participating in the strategy of an organization, participation obviously in budget, participation in sustainability. So we see these business principles that have been quite nicely knitted into this international management system. Also, it ensures an improved integration with other management systems, as I said on the previous slide, when it comes to ISO 9001, which in the past was totally separate from OHS, and the same with 14,000 with 3 standalone systems. But again, ISO 9000 has been developed, and actually the focus was to actually move into integration. ISO also published a document on the IMS, the Integrated Management System. Again, the standard it works perfectly and slots in and harmonizes with all other management systems and standards developed by ISO itself. The new, obviously, concept and the new, obviously, requirement around one of the clauses are obviously the increased involvement of leadership. We see in the past where there was a management rep in 9,000 and also moving into OHS 18,000. It is now being removed totally, and the focus is now on the leadership of the organization, top management, and again, putting obviously the emphasis back on how the leadership actually sets the tone and actually provides the resources and processes to actually drive continual improvement. And obviously the biggest benefit of all is having an improved health and safety performance. And what do we mean by performance? We mean by how do your employers actually carry out their activities, the operation in a safe way, how risks are being removed and mitigated. And again, lastly, is having an organization that not only prospers and is sustained, but moves and improves, like with all ISO management system, in an effort to continually improve every single year. Speaking about the eye-level structure, that's not only in 45,001, but again, it's aligned to 9,000 and 14,000 for a full integration of management systems. There's a 10-clause structure that ISO has introduced in this management system, like with 9 and 14. And again, the whole idea and purpose behind this is to strengthen the process approach, to make the definitions, to make the requirements more explicit, to give a clear understanding of the organization's context. The context of an organization is actually a brand new concept that was brought in 2015 with 9,000 and then to 14 and obviously to 45 that unpacks again quite a bit of what the organization does, where it is moving, what it needs to implement, and again that actually just cements the foundation of your management system itself. There's also a greater emphasis on looking for improvement rather than just looking for mitigation. So looking at maybe substituting better materials, looking at better work methodologies, looking at technology. I know we are at the brink of now introducing 4IR into obviously all our business processes. And again, looking at these opportunities, how can we protect the employees? How can we have a better workforce? How can we have a better working activities with the not only reduction but the elimination of hazards itself? The concept obviously of preventative action that was in OHS 18,000 is no longer here. The need for actually putting in management systems eliminates the preventive action clause and also concept as well, because the standard is focused on looking for risks and mitigating risks itself. The word of documented information, like in all ISO, is now being replaces the need for records and for procedures in terms of documents. And again, it's also aligned obviously to ISO 217,000. We talk about information management for organizations itself. So very quickly, just the new clauses that are in 45,001. If we look obviously at operations, so the rest of the 9,000, 14,000 is the duplicate of this, with the exception of the highlighted areas, which is only for ISO 45001, where under operation we have the hierarchy of controls, outsourcing, contractors, procurement, and emergency preparation, and obviously in improvement where we speak about OSH incidents and OSH non-conformities. But the 10 clauses are identical for all the management systems. So again, totally different from OSHAS 18001, where we have the system, which is called the high-level structure, and again, which is totally integratable with your 9,000 and your 14,000, hence reduces the need for duplication of policies and procedures, and also different terminologies. We have quite a nice synchronization of definitions, and again, the core text, as I said, in all three management systems are actually totally identical in nature itself. Just looking at, obviously, we said it's a process approach when it comes to ISO 45001, where remember it's a totally dynamic system, whereas OSHAS 18001 was not an ISO system. We see now the emergence, obviously, of the PDCA cycle, and again, looking at how the committee put together the clauses that structurally around this new PDCA cycle for ISO 45001. Again, totally dynamic in all these clauses, looking at obviously the shared relationship between the clauses that again are actually moving from planning, support, performance evaluation, and improvement. And what is in the center of it, as we said earlier, was leadership, and again driven by the top management, and not forgetting the worker, which is the most prized asset of the organization itself. Looking at obviously again the benefits and aims, the new ISO 45000 management system was designed to provide a framework for managing OSH risks and opportunities, and also the intended outcomes is that we prevent work-related injuries. We actually help workers to work safely and also maintain safe and healthy workplaces. The key component obviously is not only management of hazards, as was the case in OSHAS 18001, but now we see that the real aim and the benefit obviously for the users and organizations is the elimination of hazards, right? And we're looking at the minimization of the risks. So again, just the thought process and the ideology and the concepts totally different from what we see in OSHAS 18001. And again, is actually looking at effective preventive and protective measures, and also looking at synchronizing of obviously the ISO standards in terms of the PPE requirements, in terms of equipment and machinery. We see quite a nice harmonization of the other standards when it comes to ISO 45001. Also, obviously, the greatest benefit is having an early detection of where you're going to have your risk, and also having a plan not only to remove it, but again, how can we see improvement in our opportunities? For example, getting a better materials, getting a better systems in place, getting new technology. So again, the standard is geared up for actually having opportunities for increasing the performance of work related activities. And again, as we said earlier, the implementation of this management system is actually to address all the legal requirements, be it from the OSH Act, the regulations, the driven machinery regulations, the electrical regulations, the environmental regulations. So the standard offers a framework that organizations can now start looking and actually processing the requirements from the regulatory side, and again putting in a system in place to not only fulfill this stuff, but again move beyond to actually have an improved and again a better equipped workforce itself. Just a quick 5 tips obviously that the standard is looking at, and based on obviously is to identify your processes and activities, again, which is entrenched as part of the contents of the organizations. Obviously looking at the workers in terms of what are their activities. So it's very activity based, looking obviously from the OSHAS 18000, looking more at hazards, but again, the activities, operations, and again, looking at the associated hazards that actually are part of your organization itself. Looking for ways to actually not only reduce, but again, to actually eliminate those hazards and protecting the employees and moving on to obviously improving, and also the entire PDCA cycle that's looking at whether those controls are actually effective. And again, do we go back and we replace those controls, or do we actually move on to improve our policies and procedures, hence strengthening our management system itself? Preventive action, as we said, is one of the major things that always have people complaining about and saying, what happened to preventive action? So same with 9,000, and obviously OHS 18,000 have preventive action. 45,000 does not have it. It has corrective action because the standard himself or the system is actually viewed as a preventative tool. In saying that, we're saying that if you implement an ISO 45,000 system, you want to prevent accidents, you want to prevent deaths, and again, you want to have total well-being of your employee itself. So the risk-based thinking, as I said, has been entrenched in ISO 45,000, moving away from traditional hazard identification, risk assessment, by looking holistically at not only your operations activities, but also looking at your business processes and looking at what are the involvement and what risks do your interested parties bring to you. The backbone obviously of the system is done under ISO 31,000, which is the risk management system that was designed by ISO, as touched again by Dr. Bassoon, and again that forms the backbone of ISO 45001. Looking at risks now need to be identified, and obviously the controls in place, hence the need for the clause of preventive action is totally removed, and again is now encapsulated in the clause for corrective action itself. Just very quickly, there's a new set of obviously definitions that have been put together for ISO 45001. As we said earlier, the OSH performers, interested party, the worker, who is a worker, the difference between worker participation and consultation, which is quite important, and hence giving the standard a nice brand new feel and brand new touch, and again to be actually relevant in the times that we're living in, and also to be totally integrated with ISO 9000 and 14001. So just from my side, thank you for the opportunity, and again for the brief overview of just what ISO 45001 brings to the table, the benefits for your organization, and again integrating your management system. I think that's the greatest benefit we have from this new ISO 9001 management system. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank SABS for arranging this platform so that we can engage in. Thank you, Dr. Bassoon.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for a very enlightening presentation on various aspects of the standard itself. I think a few takeaways would be that there is a significant amount of difference between the historic OHS 18001 and the ISO 45001. And I must say, you being part of the team that played a very instrumental role in developing this international standard and ensuring that you have consensus and transitioning from the OHS 18001 wasn't to 45001 was certainly quite a challenge in terms of obtaining global consensus. I would also like to highlight a few items that was presented by Jerry, meaning that it is an integrated standard and integrated with a wide variety of other management system standards. And the 10 clauses are literally identical. And this allows for these various standards to be not necessarily standalone systems, but working together in terms of implementing and thereafter effective certification as well. It's performance-based, very important, and an element of legal compliance as well, which will support legal requirements as part of the regulations on occupational health and safety. And thank you for the key objectives and the clauses as well. I think it gives us a good sense of what the changes have been and the transition document. And lastly, the 5 tips: identify, check, reduce, improve, and verify. That forms a good structure in terms of what needs to be sought when implementing and maintaining the system. Thank you, Jerry. I trust there will be a couple of comments and questions around your presentation, which we'll engage with in the latter part of the presentation. Colleagues, it has been brought to my attention that our presenter, Mr. Jacob Malatse from the Department of Labour, is unavailable at this stage to deliver the presentation. I think we've firstly experienced some technical issues around access, and we tried to resolve that, but at this stage, to date, it hasn't been resolved. We'll continue engaging with the opportunity for him to present at this forum. If not, then he will not be part of this presentation this morning. However, I would like to continue with the presentations and move on to Mr. Jay Ganson. Mr. Jay Ganson is from the SABS. He's a technical expert and a reviewer for management system standards. He has been with the SABS for more than 12 years, started out as a candidate auditor and moved on to become a principal auditor, has been in the training space as well for 4 years. So he's a well-trained facilitator in a wide variety of management systems with focus on SANS 16001, responsible care, occupational health and safety, environmental management systems, QMS, and the like. He has a master's degree in medical science. Mr. Jay Ganson, we're looking forward to your presentation entitled The Road to Certification. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Dr. Bishun, and thank you very much for the opportunity. My presentation is going to cover the road to certification. That is one of the service offering that is provided by SABS. So that is going to be my presentation for this morning. Remember, 45001 has been adopted on 12th of March 2018, and basically we have got 3 years for the migration, and we are going to take you through the certification processes that we are going to go into. Dr. Bishun have covered this particular slide with regards to the stakeholders. We have got great partnerships with NRCS, that's the National Regulatory for Compulsory Specification. One of our accreditation bodies is SANAS and other industrial affiliations. The value chain of SABS comprises of the standards, standard compilations, standards approvals. We have also got a training academy that provides training in a wide variety of faculties, followed by providing advisory services to SMMEs and local content. We provide certification, and also we undertake the provision of product testing, sampling, and product certification. You can see on the slide that the key sectors that is supported by our provisions cover a wide array of industrial sectors, from services to chemicals to industrial and so forth. All right. As much as Dr. Bishun did mention right at the outset that management systems are voluntary in its nature, but some of them are prescribed by various stakeholders, example, like our government, like our stakeholders, that falls into our certain clientele that wants certain management systems that certain service providers and vendors needs to be certified against for them to be competitive in the market. All right, you can see in this particular slide, the 45001 belongs to the Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems. Jerry have provided a great overview in terms of the versions coming from the old 18001 to 45001, and having this particular management systems is also advantageous to clients, having the competitive edge. They can compete in the global markets, both locally and globally. It's also a platform where commitments and leadership from various organizations can also be displayed. and also ensure that compliance and conformance is also assured. Some of the legal requirements also dictate that certain management systems must be within the structures of organizational. Example, the OHS Act that Jerry have alluded to, various sections in the OHS Act, the driven machinery, the asbestos regulations, the basic conditions of employment, and various other sectors in the OHS Act that dictates the affiliation to management systems. SABS management systems are also accredited, to name a few, is the SANAS and the RVA, especially the ISO 45001 that is accredited by these two bodies. It's also good and rewarding to note that recently we had two very successful audits. RVA had a successful audit looking at our management systems and its deliverables in March this year, followed by SANAS just completed a very successful audit in July this year. The outcomes was absolutely favorable, allowing us for continued certification to our clients. The certification process to 45001 is quite a complex situation, but with our very structured approach and the new methodology that SABS is adopting called the One SABS approach model, it is going to be a very seamless approach to certify one organization to 45001. With the competitive pricing that is guided by IAF requirements and our competent personnel and resource pool, I think the certification to 45001 can be very, very seamless. It starts off with the sales department and the various competent personnel having an engagement, providing a IIV, which is the initial informative visit or the pre-audit visit, where we are going to engage with the prospective client and engage on the viability of 45001 certification. We are going to assess the requirements. We are going to assess the capabilities of such a client to go for 45001 certification and how the various mandates are going to be delivered. Thereafter, we are going to undertake an audit team based on the competency and also factoring the audit day calculations and provide a certification that is valid for 3 years. Firstly, it starts with the stage 1 assessment, which is basically a capability audit, where we are going to come with a team of competent auditors to look at the systems requirements, which have got quite a lot of requirements alluded by Jerry in his previous presentation, where it's a process-based approach, it's a risk-based approach. So now we are not going to look at the procedures in a very detailed fashion, but more the application of processes and procedures within the functionalities of the organization itself. So a stage 1 is basically a capability audit where we are going to understand the capabilities of the organization, and thereafter within a 6-month period undertake an assessment audit, which is a stage 2 audit. Obviously, during the stage 1 and stage 2 audits, there may be non-conformances that are going to be raised, the gaps going to be recognized, the areas of continual improvement also going to be discussed around, pertaining to the outcomes of 2 audits, which is stage 1 and stage 2. They are going to record non-conformances, providing you with a definite date and a time frame where the non-conformances needs to be sorted out. And obviously, with non-conformances being addressed, we also expect the robustness of remediation in terms of root cause analysis, corrective actions, and also the corrections thereof. Once that is accomplished, then the audit team undertake to go through a review processes when application to the approvals board, who is a partner to the certification team, is going to review the application for certification to a particular company where a certificate is going to be issued. The 45,001 certificate is going to be valid for 3 years, and obviously in between the 3 years there will be surveillance audits, annual surveillance audits that is going to be taking place in year 2 and year 3. Towards the end of year 3, that surveillance audit is going to be called a recertification audit. Why? Because we'd like seamless transition and the recertification of such a certificate. And obviously within that particular time frame, if and when there are modifications to the organizations in terms of processes, in terms of management systems, in terms of change in scope and core activities of the organization, these are going to affect the scope that the particular certificate that is going to be issued. A rescoping may take place, a change in address may take place, or a change in EA codes. I will cover that a little later. So rest assured, that particular certificate is going to be valid for 3 years, and in between there will be constant monitoring. What makes it so easy for SABS to deliver such a service? Obviously, we have got quite a vast resource pool. Now that we are adopting the one SABS approach, we are having all the auditors with various disciplines and registrations going into the pool, and also servicing a wide array of customers in the wide geographical areas. Just to give you an idea of the number of auditors that we've got 96 auditors taking care of the quality management systems, followed by 14 auditors, 14 registered auditors taking care of the environmental management systems, 18 taking care of the 45,001 management systems, and the energy management systems belonging to ISO 50001, we've got 5 auditors. Now bear in mind that all our auditors are multi-skilled, that each of them have got more than one scheme that they are registered in. So it also adds to the capabilities and capacities of our audit team. All our auditors are actually very well qualified and competent. In addition to their postgraduate qualifications, they undertake to go through the basic 19011, 17021, and 17065 management training. That's with regards to product certification. And also, many of them have got specialized skills and competencies like the air quality management, waste management, occupational health and safety. And to assess the auditor's qualifications, we also engage in various workshops like webinars, provide updates, provide legal updates, and also undertake peer reviews. So you can see that our capacity of auditors and its pool deal with a wide variety of industrial technologies that are useful both globally and locally. Thus far in our database, there's a huge contingent of clients that are registered. Just to give you an overview of our registered quality management systems clients, there's 1,621 and growing steadily. The energy management space, there's 7 clients that has been registered, 240 in the environmental management, which is 14,001, and 171 that are health and safety, 45,001. Of the 171 clients, there's 31 that have been migrated to the new 45,001 space. Jerry have also alluded step by step on the new changes that 45,001 takes into consideration. We as a certification body, we also take seriously what are the technical considerations going forth towards 45001. As a value add, we also take within the audit team the legal auditor, knowing that there are certain precepts within the standard that is compliance obligated, and also needs to look at the legalities around certain aspects of the standards, like your context of the organization, like your compliance evaluation, like your risks and opportunities, like your hierarchy, and the list can go on. There are certain times that we are also taking subject matter experts, like occupational hygienists, which are procured whenever is necessary. If and when we haven't got these particular specialized skills within our resource pool, we procure them externally, and where there's a formal contract that has been engaged and entered into. We are also guided by the mandatory documents that help us within the transition and migration towards 45001. The mandatory document 21 of 2018 talks about the migration plan, and which presently we are in the process of implementation. To date, there's about 20% that has been migrated, and obviously it's 3-year time frame that is to migrate into this from March 2018 to March next year. The MD22 document also guides us within the applications of the OHS requirements, and obviously it also talks about the way that the OHS requirements pertaining to 45001 needs to be delivered to the client itself. The 17021, ISO 17021 talks about the competency requirements of OHS management systems. Again, all our auditors are very, very competent to engage this. All our auditors have undertaken the prescribed training, and so from a competency aspect, all our auditors are up and running to deliver immaculate services. Part of the mandatory requirements also talks about the auditor day calculations. Now, again, there may be in practice, there are certain audits that have got quite a huge contingent of personnel within the audit team, and there are certain audits where you'll see a reduction in it. And obviously, these are guided by the various aspects within the application that is assessed. Is also guided by the mandatory documents that allow us to add man days, deduct man days, and obviously there are other areas that also influences the auditor day calculations, like the complexity of the organizations, be it high, medium, and low, the staff complement of the organization or business, and the various processes. The scope of the organization and its core activities is also taken when a quotation is drawn up, when the audit plan is delivered, when the audit team is compiled, and eventually how we are going to deliver. One of the key aspects on our competencies is the alignment of our EA codes and the NACE codes. Obviously, there are certain industries that may be multi-sited, have various activities. So we need to also align the various activities to certain codes for competency, and also aligning ourselves to IAF requirements. Examples, EA code 28 is the installation. If an organization does manufacturing and installation, the aspect of inclusion of code 28 needs to be considered. If there's injection molding to a bottling plant, the addition of code 14. If it's a distribution, that is one of the core activities of an organization, the inclusion of 31. And if certain commodities are warehoused, so the EA code of 29 is also factored into. So again, all these are technical considerations that we take into consideration when delivering our services towards certification of 45001. In terms of our migration, obviously part of the strategies of SABS, we had to have a 45,001 migration plan that has been audited and sanctioned by our external auditors, and it is currently being rolled out. The extension for the migration has been approved for a later 6 months, which is till September 2021. Due to the COVID pandemic, that has necessitated the application for an extension, which was granted, and therefore the SABS intervention is also prolonged for our last audit towards the migration will be March next year. In terms of our current interventions linked to COVID-19 pandemic, we have undertaken as an interim measure to adopt risk assessments as an intervention, where risk assessments are provided to the clients to assess the impact of certification during this particular period of extraordinary events, and to also assess how they are managing during this particular phase. The risk assessment also helps us to make a recommendation to the approvals board for an extension by a further 6 months. So that 6 months also allows us better planning towards the future, better management during this particular trying times that is posed by COVID-19. And also from a managerial angle, we also try to safeguard the credibility of clients that have got their certification in a balance, nearing recertification. So this particular window period also helps both the parties. Considering other management systems, we also take into cognizance the technical considerations, legal auditors, subject matter experts, the competencies within the various sectors. The EA codes have been spoken about, and also just as a sideline, the 50,001, we've also got a transition plan to also meet our mandate come next year, September. In terms of the IAF documentation, we take cognizance to auditor competencies, aligning them to various EA codes. The mandate calculations is very, very stringent. It's also reviewed at approvals level, that auditor mandates must be equated to the pricing and also determined by the various variables that I've mentioned, like the size, the complexity, the number of staff, and whether it's a multi-site, whether the industry have multiple certification schemes. It also helps to make a decision on the audit day calculations, which is also linked to the pricing. So why SABS as your preferred certification body? Going 45,001 route is fairly seamless. We've got systems in place. We've got an end-to-end system where we can take you from application to having your certificate on the wall within 10 months. It's an end-to-end process. One SABS approach methodologies are being applied. We are accredited and compliant. We are overseen by RVA, SANAS. I've alluded to the success of their recent audits. We are competitive in comparison to other certification bodies. We are also guided by IAF guidelines in terms of pricing. Our resource pool in terms of auditor and other personnel are adequately qualified and experienced to deliver a great service. Also, our training facility is also offering online courses like the migration for all custodians to management systems, leadership awareness, module 1s and 2s, which comprises of the understanding and implementation of the systems. They also engage in legal knowledge courses. These are available online or via MS Teams interactive learning programs, which can be engaged in. The websites can be provided to you all. And obviously, there is a need that our relationships and partnerships continue post audits. So it's not that we are going to undertake and provide you all with a certificate on the wall and finish off with the audit, understanding that our age is 75 years in the market. Due to steady growth, relationships have been built and partnerships secured. So definitely SABS is your preferred certification body. With that in mind, thank you very much for your patient hearing, and back to Dr. Bishun.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you for a very holistic presentation on a number of issues that you pointed out. Capacity, capabilities, technical expertise of the SABS in providing the certification services. I think a few take-home messages, which is, I think the process for certification is very important to understand and appreciate, because they might have expectations out in the marketplace on industry in terms of how do you proceed from stage 1, stage 2, and then to certification. I think a seamless approach and an efficient approach towards gaining certification is what clients will be looking for as part of services to be offered. So Jay also touched on the requirements for migration, as well as the rules that have been put forward, and transition rules according to IAF and ISO, and the movement from OHS 18001 to 45001. Thank you, Jay. Seriously valuable information for all the participants in the event. I've been notified that Mr. Jacob Manlatse would not be participating due to a significant amount of technical issues we've been experiencing to get him on the platform. So that appears to be our last presentation for this webinar. We have a few comments and questions. I see that, so I'm going to move to the published comments and questions, and I'll allow a few of them. Well, I think we can allow for all of them to be responded to by, where possible, myself, as well as the colleagues, Mr. Jerry Ramdani and Jay Ganson. Just going to go through the published comments and questions. Will the presentations be made available to the participants and invitees? Sure. Jay, if you could remove sharing on your side, I would appreciate it. Okay, so the question was on will the presentations be available? I'm sure we'll be able to provide that, and I did get a go-ahead from the marketing and communication team that will get this done after the event has closed. The next question is, how does the emphasis on worker participation and consultation on this standard differ from the previous standard clause on internal and external communication? So Jerry, I'll leave that through to you to respond, or Jay Ganson to respond. I'm going to go through them and then I'll open the floor for the colleagues to respond.
Okay,
question.
Thanks,
Jerry, you're going to go ahead? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, you want to go to the question first and then answer, or must we answer after each question?
What I'll do is, maybe we could just go through each one of them. So I'll give you the opportunity now to respond.
Okay, cool. Yes, guys, just ignore the generator in the office park in the back. I think it's quite rowdy. But yeah, so how does it differ? All right, so quickly going back, if we can go to the definition of the participation and consultation, or maybe just what is meant by worker participation. You know, if you look at historically when we did worker we engaged our workers. It was management developing a procedure, policy, or a process, and then presenting it to the worker, and they tick the box. We have engaged the worker. What ISO 45000 wants to see is that the workers are now consulted. And what does we mean by consulted? It means that when you develop, for example, a safe working instruction, that the worker or the worker representatives take it, they have time to discuss that work instruction, they have time to make their own recommendations and question it, and then come to some sort of resolve. So the intention is not merely to say, all right, we had a meeting, we gave our new policies and procedures to the workers, and they signed and everything is in place. That is not the intention of what we want to achieve when we actually put worker participation and consultation. So again, just to go back, what we want to see, as if I put my auditor cap on, what I would like to see when I come to worker consultation is that there is a platform that you have engaged your worker, you have given the worker or the worker representative, for example, a work instruction, they have read it, they have consulted with their colleagues, they have made some sort of changes or reviewed or made a comment on the PPE they're going to use, make a comment on basically, if you look COVID-19, are they happy to come to work? Are they happy to work from home? What is the workplace introduced? And there's a sign off. And again, the proposal from management has been changed. That's what we want to see when we say a worker consultation. Participation, again, a very high level. You call your workers in, you had a meeting, you discuss what will be the new work methodologies, and you have sign off in it. So that's basically what we mean when we say comparing it to OHS 18000 and what we would look for in OHS 18001 vis-a-vis looking what now ISO 45001 expects you to have.
Thank you, Jerry, and I think that comprehensively addresses that question. I'm going to move on to the next question, which addresses how many auditors would audit an organization with 1,200 employees and plus minus 2,000 contractors. Jay did allude to the IAF document that is prescribed, which is taken on by all certification bodies in terms of ensuring that it provides a guideline in terms of auditors for the complexities of the organizations. But Jay, would you want to respond briefly to this? I think this is not a straightforward answer, so you can't give an answer right now because it's an exercise that needs to be evaluated, and it takes a number of parameters for evaluation.
Thank you, Dr. Bishun. Yeah, with regards to determining the auditor man days, it's basically difficult to thumbs up, but these are the variables that we need to understand the complexity of an organization. 1,200 employees is good, 2,000 contractors is also good, but we factor all these things into a little calculator, which gives us a format of the number of auditor days. Now that particular auditor days, I'm just saying, say hypothetically it's 18. That 18 days is going to be split into a stage 1 and a stage 2, and it's normally a fraction that is going to be distributed within the various audits, and also within a certification audit we normally allow for 1/3 of the prescribed auditor day calculated and the remaining at the recert. So this is some of the methodologies that we use to determine auditor day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I'm going to move on to the next question. Due to COVID-19 pandemic affecting companies negatively and the current OHS 18,000 system requirements not being completed in terms of transitioning, will there be an extension for the transition to 45,001 in 2021? Will penalties be applied? Jay, would you be able to take this one? Or Jerry?
No, it's fine. I can take that.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. In fact, very honestly, SABS has been proactive looking at the pandemic and its impact. We've basically also devised internal controls mechanisms. And for now, the risk assessment plays a very, very pivotal role that is going to determine continual certification, also aligning and considering the impact that COVID-19 is posing. So the continuation of the 6 months and the extension of certification is not guaranteed, provided that the information that is provided by the organization is assessed to understand that the certification and its continuance is not going to be in jeopardy. Then only we are going to extend that particular certificate for a further 6 months. But yes, as COVID subsides, as normalcy resumes, we are definitely going to take other initiatives in reinstate and helping organizations to reinstate their certification for a wider time frame. Thank you.
Just to add something on there, Dr. Busud.
Sure.
I think, but just maybe look at the terminology because it's migration. With 18 to 45 is a migration audit, whereas for 9014 was a transition audit itself. So just some process issues there. Another thing as well, remember if, especially on health and safety, it's very difficult to do a online or a remote audit because it's activity based. And I think that's where the organization must just remember that yes, certification is you want to have certification, but the more important thing is that you want to protect your workers and you want to protect basically your organization itself. So moving the 6 months for certain sectors that are closed off, but organizations that are continuing, like your mines and manufacturing, that should not impede their migration or even the management system per se. So I think organizations must just take that into consideration when it comes to their certificate and also their migration process, because any which way an auditor needs to be on site, especially for health and safety. If it's an office-based environment, then that's quite nice. But if your operations and activities are of a nature that obviously it is inherently a high risk situation, then obviously audits needs to be done on site.
Thank you, Jay and Jerry, for that clarity as well. The next question that pops up is how many days are these 45,000 audits scheduled for? I think it's been addressed by Jay already. And in terms of clients, I think there's no limit to the amount of clients that SABS could service. I'll move on to the next. Will injury experience or incidents management be included in the audit tool for ISO 45001? I'll let my colleagues address that. Jay or Ganson?
Yes, thank you. I think the 45001 is solely a risk-based approach, and when it comes to injury management, it is one of the very core aspects that we will be looking at. Injury management that also includes fatalities, DIFR, and the statistics can go on. And also how it is managed, how it is monitored, how it is eradicated and prevented thereof. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, just to add quickly on what Jay, just elaborate a bit more. Just also looking at one level higher, remember that will fall under non-conformity, and obviously tracking of your incident and accident rate. So it's very important that organizations have non-conformity management. And obviously what we're looking for there is that how are you recording and reporting. First of all, what's your reporting mechanisms when it comes to incidents and accidents, and again, how are you reporting and how do you consolidate? So basically looking at the full process cycle again, the root cause analysis, looking at what mitigation is in place, looking at the effectiveness of obviously the incident or accident, and closing the loop. So you want to have that obviously the entire non-conformity management, breaking it down obviously to your incidents, be it a fatality, be it an injury, or even be it something that happens from your contractor or your interested party side, and how are you actually doing a trend analysis, and again, what are the effectiveness of your controls in place. So yes, I totally agree with Jay in that.
Thank you, Jerry, and Jay for the response. I see a comment, given the pandemic challenges in companies, what are the prospects of granting an extension to the March 2021 migration? Jay, I think you've covered that in your explanation earlier on. I'll move on to the next item. Is the requirement for assessment audit stage 2 to be done within 6 months or at the 6th month of stage 1? i.e., can we have stage 1 in November, stage 2 January the following year, and cert March 2020? Off the cuff, yes, but Jay or Jerry, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you. Yeah, very, very possible. In fact, what we'd like to do is, again, due to the rapid generation of the revenue, we also undertake to expedite the time frame from stage 1 to stage 2. It's not necessarily within 6 months, a maximum of 6 months, I can say that, but it can be done within 6 months to generate the particular revenue. Stage 1 in November, stage 2 in January, and recertification in March, provided that the client is 80% conforming, compliant to the requirements of 45,001. Very, very workable. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. So I don't see any further comments, questions on the Q&A icon. At this stage, it's 11:35, well within time or scheduled time of completion of the webinar. If I don't see any further comments, I would like to thank our expert panelists this morning, Jerry Ramdani and Jay Ganson, for very insightful presentations and sharing of knowledge on the ISO 45000 Occupational Health and Safety management system. I'm sure that the participants have gained enormous value from the presentations that you put forward and responding to the questions and the comments. I have been advised that these presentations will be available, and we'll make them available on our website or other platforms as well. So on that note, thank you, Jay and Jerry. Your participation is highly appreciated, and I would like to thank the participants as well and all the invitees that participated on their contribution to this event. With that, I would like to now take the opportunity to close the event. Once again, thank you.